Welcome everyone to our fall 2025 series of Tuesday Times Roundtable. Today's session is titled First Gen Global Determined Rewriting the Grad School Narrative. My name is Michelle Zaldivar, your Assistant Director at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. TTR is the OGLI's flagship discussion series that brings together multiple perspectives on current global issues and trends to engage in meaningful conversations on topics aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All TTR sessions are recorded. You can learn more about TTR, watch past recordings, or come back and reference this one at go.fiu.edu/TTR. Please take a moment to sign in using this QR code on the screen or the link that's in the chat. We use this sign-in form to report attendance for Tuesday Times Roundtable. So whether you're here for Global Learning Medallion points, Honors College engagement points, extra credit from your professor, or you're just curious to learn more, we're glad you're here. A special thank you to our global learning team that is joining us today. We have graduate assistant Roy G and our student intern Agustina helping and supporting you in the chat. So please be sure to ask whatever questions, anything that comes up. We do monitor the Q&A through the chat feature, so feel free to drop your questions in there. If you'd like to learn more about the opportunities at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives, including the Global Learning Medallion, Peace Corps Prep, or scholarship and fellowship opportunities, we encourage you to visit us on our website at goglobal.fiu.edu/students. Or come by our peer advisor drop-in hours that are available through Zoom, where you can talk to any one of our peer advisors and the Global Learning Student Board. You can reference these hours that are available here, or if you want to check back in later, check us out on Instagram, and those will be updated there. Our Instagram is at @GoGlobalFIU. TTR centers on global issues and trends and is always linked to a New York Times article that continues the conversation. You can read the article for this week's session at go.fiu.edu/TTR 1104. That's 11 for November. 04 is today's date. If you find a paywall while you're trying to access the article, that just means that you haven't activated your free New York Times subscription with FIU. FIU provides everyone at FIU with an at fiu.edu email address with a free digital subscription to the New York Times. So if you haven't already, you can activate your subscription at accessnyt.com. Today's session's topic on graduate school access relates to SDG number 10, reduced inequalities within and among countries, providing access for all and building effective, accountable institutions at all levels. To learn more about SDG 10, including targets, indicators, and goal progress, check out go.fiu.edu/SDG. It is with great pride that I get to introduce you to today's presenter, a global learning faculty member here at FIU. Dr. Mark Scheinbaum is an adjunct professor at Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs at FIU. Dr. Scheinbaum brings decades of distinguished experience in journalism, education, and international affairs to his work and as a scholar and communicator. A former editor and publisher of New Jersey's Success Business magazine, Dr. Scheinbaum also hosted a nightly business and general talk show syndicated on the American Radio Network and broadcast on WFTL in Fort Lauderdale and Miami and WJNO in West Palm and the Treasure Coast. Earlier in his career, he served as a news correspondent for the United Press International, contributing to UPI's television and audio divisions and to ABC TV Network's News in New York. In academia, Dr. Scheinbaum teaches political science and international relations at Florida International University and recently served as vice president of the Graduate Student Educational Research Association at Northeastern University in Boston, where he earned his Doctor of Education in Organizational Leadership and Theory. His publications include Battles for Freedom, Authoritarians and Democrats, Meeting and Competing, and the forthcoming second edition of Media and International Relations. Internationally, Dr. Scheinbaum has taught in Panama, serving on the boards of the American Society of Panama and Kiwani's Canal de Panama, and organizing a 17-nation student symposium for the Haitian earthquake relief. A former mediator, arbitrator, and Pulitzer Prize nominee for investigative reporting, he brings a unique blend of global insight, civic engagement, and scholarly leadership to every presentation. Welcome, Dr. Scheinbaum, to today's TTR. I turn it over to you.
Well, I thank you for inviting me. Global learning has been a tremendous part of my personal and academic journey. And also, we should mention that in the last 7 years, teaching political science, international relations, and comparative politics at FIU, we have really had success in making sure that the Global Learning Medallion Certificate is part of the graduate journey for all of our students, whether it was in person, hybrid, online, synchronous, or asynchronous, and certainly bringing into the curriculum the global perspective. Taking the view of graduate school, the barriers, the enablers for people considering graduate school, or perhaps not. We also have to thank two very, very distinguished department chairs who've allowed me to be part of the new generation of fellow learners, Dr. John Clark and Dr. Barry Levitt from the political science department, and my personal mentor, Dr. Sarah Moats, who has enabled us to have Quality Matters top online offerings here at FIU, and the entire staff of Global Learning, including one of the alumni now, I guess. I believe she's at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Stephanie Dosha. In terms of the video you're going to be seeing and the research that we did, it does have a global perspective in that domestically, Professor Chris Unger, who is a pioneer in the use of AI in education and has developed curriculum at Brown University, Harvard, and Northeastern. Dr. Carl Reed, who was a tremendous mentor for me recently in two different terms at MIT, where he is heading up initiatives and now doing private consulting. They were part of the 3.5 years of research which went into what became an award-winning documentary dealing with these narrative issues for graduate school. A group of students from the University of Michigan, who are mostly from Malaysia, who returned after COVID to Malaysia with a program called Pistachio, not the nut, but Pistachio, showing centers of influence in your family, in your extended family, and just in terms of people you meet every day, who tremendously influenced one's decisions on higher education. Global learning was developing more and more cooperative and collaborative programs in countries such as Chile and also in Colombia, who were able to help in the development of our research and our questions. And of course, many years of teaching in Panama, including the University of Louisville's Quality Leadership Campus, which includes two programs from FIU. These were all part of the material that went into the discussions you're going to see. We'll start with a rather academic, quick little PowerPoint slideshow. But since we will be in a cloud recording, for people who are doing their own research, people who are mentoring, student council, people in high schools, people in university level mentoring or guidance positions, might want to go back and look at some of these frames and see some of the work that we had done academically to prepare for production of this video. So without further ado, let's take a look at our little slide presentation. And we can go to the next part in terms of the narratives. The narratives are important because there's not a magical formula. Some people, I think, erroneously believe that if you have access to certain programs, which are going to automatically deal with certain ethnicities and cultures, you have an instant ticket to college and graduate school. You'll find out in the actual narratives from the people who agreed to be interviewed. Lots of people say they want to be interviewed, but to spend the time and the effort and dozens of hours before the editing. and then the ADA compliance and the sound and it's a big deal to agree to participate in these things. And you're seeing Lucia Orellana, who is now a mental health counselor from a Guatemalan, El Salvadorian family, who found that working in communities where traditionally Spanish was a second language, but with a population in Florida, where in the Guatemalan community, there were many people who speaking indigenous languages and not know Spanish. She felt it was something she could accomplish, even though she would be the first person in her family to graduate from college or graduate school. And we go on to the next slide. And we see Jaziel Ramos, whose mother was a tremendous artist, but her art never got her beyond Home Depot, helping you to design your kitchen. But her passion for graphic arts encouraged her son to go on and to accept a scholarship based on his tremendous talent as an animator and artistic designer. We didn't know that so much of our research would lead to Puerto Rico or to people who went into the military that served as a catalyst for their careers. But again, the people who say they want to participate in detailed narratives, it might be 60, 80, 100, but to find 5 or 10 or 15 who finally agreed to go through the program at a time and effort. And we also want to thank in Boca Raton, Lynn University and Brandstar Studios, a $2 million studio, which donated their time to us for production. Palm Beach State University in Lake Worth, allowing facilities for public forums and focus groups on what the folks were saying. Jaziel points out, as you will see, that he was first embarrassed about speaking mostly Spanish, even in school, until he determined that speaking the language which was most powerful for him was part of the success of his journey. And next we have the questions that we were investigating. I will point out that question 2, in a time when sociologists in Argentina were using the term Latinx, only 15% of the people said they ever used that or heard that, whether it was pejorative or not. We did find barriers to younger women from predominantly Spanish-speaking families who were de facto guided to social science and behavioral science when they might want to be engineers or architects or go on for an MBA or go to medical school or study aerospace or biological experimentation under the erroneous feeling that tier 1 research universities would not be accepting them. Not only did we find in the literature more and more schools such as FIU accepting people, but encouraging them, recruiting them, more and more of the mentors explaining to people that when you have the desire and the opportunity, there are facilities and abilities and paths to your success. We'll see the next one. We were looking at stakeholders. It was a global group of questionnaires. We were at the end of COVID. We had a Fulbright scholar in Germany and in Austria. We had a number of people I mentioned in Malaysia. We had people throughout the Caribbean and Latin America helping us to prepare surveys and helping us to pose questions that would become part of our initial questions leading to the interviews with our subjects. Everyone was 18 years or older, and we really tried not to do anything to cut too closely in our editing. The reason the original documentary ran 48 minutes, we didn't want anyone to say, well, you took us out of context. You edited it a way where you were cherry picking only the good things or bad things. So the redaction that was done by the staff today to 16 minutes still maintains the context, the feeling of what these 6 remarkable people had to say. And next, AI becoming more and more important, the ability to form weighted cloud messages where not only do you come up with frequency and content analysis, but depending on the variables that you're using or looking for, family responsibilities, fear, peer pressure, your friends on social media saying you can do this, you cannot do this, why don't you do this, ignoring them. What enables people, money, 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 paying for graduate school, always an issue. And we find one of the number one variables is whether or not anyone else in your family had ever attended college or graduate school, or had they gone to a vocational school for a year. And coming up on Thanksgiving, who were some of the guests visiting your family? A relative from Atlanta, a cousin from Denver, a visiting friend from Mexico who succeeded as being a center of influence in their own profession and influenced you when you were young. Next. We can go on to the next slide. Again, different ways depending on the variables you put in, from the anxiety on, do I have a chance? You'll see Mr. Patrick Glover, who was thrown out of 3 high schools. He was ejected from 3 high schools and told he would be a failure until a guidance counselor in another room heard something of interest, and he ended up being the first person to win a full scholarship to go to the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, and he has a successful investment and commodities company now. Next. Key findings. I would say that we find that if you take the time to sit down and interview your friends and family, if you're involved in higher education and in positions where you are setting the priorities for funding and for particularly for recruiting, these career fairs that you go to, the way in which you present the opportunities of top research opportunities is often the enabler that makes people sign the application. Next. The video that we did won 2 international awards, and you can see we went on to be featured and shown at these other film festivals, hoping that educators in other countries throughout the world really would take a look at a 48-minute video dealing with 6 remarkable people. Only one of them did not go to graduate school. You'll see Coach Ira Hubschman, who for 6 decades has been a top athletic coach, mostly in Florida, but he always loved mathematics. So he got a degree in mathematics, and school principals said, hey, everybody wants to be a coach, but here's a guy who could also teach math, because math was his passion. I think he went to graduate school for 2 months and quit and said, no, I don't need this. I don't want this. So I believe this is our last one, and we have one more. That's it. So this is the background that went into the creation of a documentary dealing with the power of the narratives. You'll see a lot of logos from a lot of universities, including FIU. These were the schools that either assisted us, the schools that influenced our staff and our team, or the stakeholders involved. A tremendous amount of post-production work, and we actually thank the Autonomous University of Mexico, where both in San Diego and Tijuana, we found a bilingual production team, which was compliant with ADA compliance and even had done their own original sound for music, which helped us finish the project. So I thank Global Learning for allowing us to present you with a shortened version of The Road to Graduate School.
And if I can, just a very quick reminder, feel free everyone to drop your questions in the chat as they come up as we're watching the video, and we'll bring them back at the Q&A after the video. And without further ado.
I'm Mark Scheinbaum, and this started as my own research into my own doctoral dissertation, but it evolved into the stories of 6 remarkable people, their narratives, their stories about what enabled them and what sometimes prevented them from continuing their careers in higher education. We'll learn about their lives, their trials, their tribulations, the pressures of friends and relatives, and of course the financial pressures. How do you pay for graduate school? How do you pay for professional school? Along their way, I learned a lot. I reflected on my own experiences, and I think you'll enjoy listening to their stories as well. So sit back, enjoy the program, and continue your dedication to learning.
Reach out to someone, someone you look up to, whether it be a teacher, a colleague at work, whoever is in your surrounding, and ask them, what can I do to accomplish my goals?
Well, even undergrad and graduate, it was easy. There was no money for my household. My mom, we were part of the working poor, so by me knowing there was no money, I always had to go get the money to bring things to fruition, i.e., college, for example. So I had to network, I had to fill out the scholarship applications, I had to do the proper things to align myself with the scholarship stars, more or less, I would call it, so they could come to fruition. So I had to self-discipline myself and put in a lot of work and sacrifice to get to this point.
I think my advice is that, we could have many things in our backpacks, like I always says, and that backpack is from your childhood, your generations, your generic, but find that fire inside of you, find that light inside of you that it define you, you define your journey. You can make things that they were impossible possible, even if it's through your faith, even if it's through your own passion, even if it's to prove others wrong. Just follow your dream.
It was one of my loves. I actually liked math a lot. I liked physical education. Of course, I liked lunch too, but I mean, that's besides the point. But it was something that came fairly easy to me, and a lot of the math teachers didn't want to teach the lower level kids either. And I felt very comfortable teaching the algebra classes and the remedial math classes to help the kids that weren't as talented. So, it worked out really good for me because they found a place for me, and I found a place, to.
If you believe there's a glass ceiling, if you believe there's a boundary or a barrier, you've already brought into a system of no faith and no belief. So you have to unbelieve that there's no barriers in glass ceiling and just go forward and don't give up.
You can imagine the pressure as a woman. So then they were like, well, why are you not married, or why are you not having kids? Because those are part of the expectations of a woman from Puerto Rico.
And the most important thing I had, which is an important part of, the thing that drives me, is freedom. Like, I could set my own schedule. I could choose my own courses. I could show up, and I was totally motivated to do all those things, and I did them. And in some ways, college was the time of my life. I wasn't a struggling student in a way, because not only did I have the military money behind me, my grades were so good that I was, getting scholarships, and I was getting dean's lists, and it was a state school, so they'd give you a little bit extra money if your GPA was a certain level, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I loved it. I had a great time.
So I spoke to this other mother for woman to me that was like a mother, and I was like, hey, I'm feeling this way. And she's like, why? She's like, you're an amazing person. You have gone so far. Don't make one little thing stop you. Use that in your advantage. And I was like, you know what? So I started using my culture and my language to make my projects. So a lot of my projects were based on like Hispanic stuff, using language like Spanish as the language for it. And the professors were happy because I was using my knowledge and what I was, grown into as part of my stuff.
Hablar con tu familia, explicarles cuáles son sus sueños, A veces, tal vez, uno tendrá vergüenza, platicar con sus padres, pero a veces sus padres pueden ser
Claro.
alguien de soporte, darte buenos consejos o tal vez motivarlo.
En un momento sueño o pensamiento de ir a la universidad como ingeniero mecánico o seguir la pasión del arte que tanto había sido inculcada por mi mamá, que es una artista de interiores, diseñadora de interiores. Y, ¿verdad? Y seguir eso, pero obviamente también saber que, pues, dividirme de mi familia, venir a vivir solo. Obviamente fue algo drástico, no fue algo fácil, pero a veces hay que, ¿verdad? Hay que hacer cambios para poder mejorar el futuro.
I don't think I can point to anyone and say that's the reason I went to college, other than honestly myself. I mean, for me, it was just a path that I thought that you take if you are going to try to better yourself, if you're going to try to, quote, live the American dream.
I know a little bit about your journey, but from a kid in Puerto Rico ending up going to school in Boca Raton, Florida, give us some family background and how you got here and how you got to an undergraduate program at a university.
This college email came in saying that I was accepted. And I was like, what? So I started also reaching out to other colleges. And then I found this college that was called Digital Media Arts College, was here in Boca Raton. And I cannot apply. And when they saw my portfolio, because they asked for my portfolio, they were like, hey, we actually like your portfolio. You have, talent for art. We would love for you to actually come in and compete for one of our like college funds, scholarship, yeah. And I was like, what? So I remember at the time, we had just came to Florida to visit other schools. So I was like, my mom was like, hey, I don't have the money to pay for you for a flight. So I had to go to government. I had to go to people in my community that actually helped my teachers in my high school collect the money just to help me come here. That I didn't even know. They just surprised me with an envelope.
How old were you?
I was 16 at that time.
So my name is Yari Nieves. I am original from Puerto Rico. I was raised in Bayamo, Puerto Rico. It's a city close to San Juan, the capital, and I live by the mountains. I always like to recall by the mountains because there's different areas and different personalities Puerto Ricans. And I like to mention that I come from a family that didn't even have transportation to reach to hospitals or to reach to schools. They had to walk hours and hours to get education. So when I was 18 years old, there was a lot of hurricanes in Puerto Rico, and that's when my life changed, and I redirect my life into the military. I always been a 4.0 GPA student, very disciplined into my school and my academia, because my grandparents put the root that wisdom and academia is very important to us humans to grow. Some get it from the school, and others, like my grandfather, got it working on the farm, and my grandmother raising 14 children with limited resources.
14 children.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. On the farm.
Yes, on the farm. And I come from a community that even your neighbors are your family. You raise together, you grow together, and there was no division in that community.
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. 21 days after my mom's 16th birthday. I was her second child. I was born out of wedlock. My mother was one of 9 children, and I feel fortunate in that my mother, when I was about 3 years old, met and married a guy who had joined the U.S. military and was on his way to Korea. My mother had gotten a job in St. Louis, Missouri at a processing station because that was as far west as the United States government went at the time. And she met this guy at this processing station, and they got married, and he eventually ended up adopting us, me and my brother. And we grew up as Army brats after that. So
How many different cities did you live in growing up?
probably 5 or 6. So we lived in Savannah, Georgia. We lived in Huntsville, Georgia. Obviously, I lived in St. Louis. Lived in Killeen, Texas. Lived in. We never ventured outside of Fort Knox, Kentucky. We lived in Baumholder, Germany. We lived in Sagahara, Japan. So yeah, how many is that? 5 or 6, 7?
lost
Yeah.
My name is Lucia Orellana, if you want to do it with the Spanish accent. Well, I'm really excited to be invited to talk about this topic because it's something that I have a lot of pride in. I am the first in my family to graduate, but not only that, like my grandma has 8 kids, 24 grandchildren, and I was the first one.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And where did you grow up? And tell us something about your family and your siblings or whatever.
I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida. I was born in Los Angeles, California. For better opportunities, my dad brought us here to Florida. And
From where?
Oh, my parents. My dad is from El Salvador. My mom's from Guatemala, and they met in California.
You knew you were going to be going for a graduate degree in what field? Psychology?
So counseling.
Mental health counseling.
Mental health counseling.
And you saw a need in your day-to-day work at the clinics and the sessions and the facilities you were working in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so where did you apply?
Palm Beach Atlantic University.
And how many years did you spend there?
2 years.
And were you finding support financially with work study and programs or internships, or were these internships not available until you completed a certain number of hours? I mean, tell us a little bit about the financial pressures on you during those 2 years.
Mm-hmm. So I did look into any kind of like help, scholarship, or anything like that, and I didn't find any because I was a graduate. A lot of the help and the scholarships are usually for undergraduates, and I didn't do too much research on the work study, so I don't know if that was available, but I was working my full-time job.
So you were still doing the full-time job?
I was, yes. So as I mentioned, I relied on loans mostly, and then whatever scholarship I could get through my workplace.
And you graduated when?
In December, last December.
And what was your family reaction to you being the first person in your family with a graduate degree?
Well, we did definitely have a party. They threw me a party, which was really sweet. And I had cousins, verbally say to me that I am an inspiration. So that was really moving.
I mean, come on. I mean, we have people who, for whatever reasons, are encouraged to get an undergraduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
But in the extended group of cousins, nieces, nephews, and everybody, you were the first for the undergraduate and the first for the graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So, come on. You could crow a little bit about yourself. I mean, how does it make you feel?
I feel amazing. I feel a little guilty bragging about it, but there are moments where I'm like, oh, yeah, I did that.
Yes, we thank you. We thank you for viewing that. And Michelle, I think we can post a link to the entire 48-minute video where there's a lot more information on the folks. Bob Arnold from Harvard University, he had a conflict because Harvard, NYU, and Stanford were fighting over him, and he really wanted to go to NYU, he said, because that's where President Kennedy's son was going. He thought it'd be really cool to uh, go to school with JFK Jr., but his uncle, who was a dock worker in Bayonne, New Jersey, said, "What? You got into Harvard Law School. That's where you need to go." And I think he ended up being one of the law review editors. So we didn't cherry pick it at all. Um, I don't know, Michelle, if there is one question that I can get into right away, unless you have another one, or we want to open it up live, or should I take the question from the chat room? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, so I'm going to say again, I encourage any participant, if you want to drop your question in the chat, we will gladly read it out for you. Or as we make our way after this one, you're also welcome to go ahead and raise your hand, unmute yourself, and ask your question yourself. But yeah, let's read out Natalia's question here in the chat. Natalia, do you want to give some context and ask your question?
Well,
Sure.
there was.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for this. That it was really interesting. Yeah, my question was, why do so many students choose to pursue their education in the United States, even though it's significantly more expensive? And I didn't even add like the visa requirements. I was an international student myself, and just it's so difficult. So I just don't know if you have any data or any information on like, is it marketed towards students more, or is that like, I don't know, I just feel like it would be so much easier and cheaper to study in Europe.
Again, I'm speaking for myself only, for my own experience, but also a literature survey, a literature review of hundreds and hundreds of journal articles and dissertations done on this topic. And for sure, the experience of the worst global pandemic in 104 years changed the scenario of how some of these students are being recruited and where they choose to go. And I'd like to say it's anecdotal and it's my view only, but what I'm saying also, I believe, is backed up by the statistics, the qualitative and the quantitative research that's been done. First of all, the United States of America, whether you like or dislike any particular administration, from a financial point of view, from an economic point of view, is the safe haven of record. And yes, you may argue Switzerland might be safer for some reasons. But the families who have the resources to send their children to graduate school or undergraduate school anywhere in the world historically have chosen the venues within the United States of America. Because whether those students decided to stay and never return to their home countries, and many of them, because of financial scholarship or other reasons, are required to return to their home countries, this was a society and the economy and the nation of record where people want their safe money. And one way to create safe money is to have it with your kids. So whether you are from Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Greece or Nicaragua or anywhere, if a generation change occurs where you now have a resource and ability, I don't want to use the word hide, but to secure wealth in the United States, that is an incentive. I was in London for a while this summer. I did notice some shifting. Also, the academic world is sadly or gladly dominated by the quality higher educational institutions and their research in the United States and perhaps Canada and the UK and to some extent now Australia and New Zealand. But the US is still, even with the decline caused by COVID and increases coming back. Having said that is the big caveat. We find a decline in the last year or two in the rates of attraction to the United States. And the immediate thing for people who think in political terms is, because they like or dislike tariffs or rules or immigration or who is or is not in the White House at a particular time. And if you think the current White House invented certain things, make sure you enroll at FIU and you study a president named, let's see, Andrew Jackson. You want to see someone who bent the rules or changed the rules or changed the dynamics. And the reason why we're seeing some favoritism now, and you're asking a great question and it's important, but we're seeing families coming for visitations, visiting, doing visits to different campuses, little tours of whatever schools, including FIU, looking at the communities, and in some cases going back to Beijing or Lima or Tegucigalpa or wherever, and saying, we are going to send our sons and daughters and pay cash, because remember, most foreign students are paying cash. They do not qualify for FAFSA loans, work study, or anything. I had a dean at Boston University who said to me, the international student admissions and recruiting at BU pay for all of their other scholarship funding and supplements to everyone else. Cash business, big money, it's business, higher education. But now we're seeing a deflection of students from the United States to Australia, Canada, somewhat the UK, and a little bit to New Zealand. Now, I'll give you the big answer in a moment, the spoiler in a moment. But the mini spoiler is, for the doctoral level, Australia and to some extent New Zealand say, wait a second, Susan, Philip, Joseph, Joaquin, Mary, Harry, you already have a master's degree and you'd like a doctorate, so we're going to have you go into a doctoral program and have 1 or 2 years of classwork. You're going to take another X number of credits and pay big money for those credits that are in some cases duplicative of what you've done in the master's degree program, which is why we saw UVA and other schools, even in law, joint degrees, graduate with your master's and your doctorate, even if you have to stay an extra year. But what's happening is they are beginning, and you look into more first-person textbooks, more of the academic work moving away from third person only for the lived experience of the 6 people you saw today, of professors and researchers explaining their lived journeys within coding, which is not that popular anymore with AI, within physical tests, within quantitative analysis, within all of their research programs, but allowing the students to go, boom, you're into your dissertation. Give us your proposal. Let's meet. Let's talk. Let's spend 2.5 or 3.5 years doing your research on your doctoral dissertation in Australia and New Zealand, instead of taking 4.5 or 5.5 or 6 years, while you go in with sometimes master's students, sometimes honors undergraduates, whatever, and pay big money for another year or 2 of coursework with adjuncts or not. I am not qualified to determine. I'm coming from the world of business. I'm not qualified to say whether these parents are correct or not. But if you're looking for a doctoral degree from a good institution, English language based, which will probably be accepted in the rest of the British Commonwealth and probably in the US and Canada, and you can get your doctorate in 3.5 or 4 years without a requirement of taking 1.5 and 2 years of coursework, if you meet the requirements and you're evaluated. So that's the mini spoiler. The big spoiler is violence. Every time there's a shooting or an attack on a US college campus or an elementary school or a parkland, X thousands of parents in other countries say, no, no. Except in Panama, they don't say no. They say, no. Okay, no, no. Yes, grandma and grandpa went to Loyola and UF. You studied computer science and an MBA program from FIU through Louisville, in a honors program in Panama, and you thought you were going to go to Louisville or Miami or Tallahassee, wherever, after 2 years. But the parents and the grandparents with the money said, no, you're not, because we don't feel that the feedback we're getting on your physical safety at graduate and professional schools in the United States is at a level we are comfortable with now. And sadly, and I have seen this personally at 2 universities, there's a real question about how much of the crime is really reported, or our campus police making a phone call and moving something across the street where the municipal police are answering the rape or the assault or the violence, so that it's not recorded in the FBI records for the university when the parents who are visiting campus are looking up the numbers. So you're asking a question which is not easy to answer. And many people listening now who have experience in law enforcement and safety will disagree. But you're asking someone who devoted 3.5 or 4 years into the macro issue, and for sure, violence in the United States of America, not the politicians, not how much you have to pay at the airport for a fee, not whether or not apartments are going to be cheap, not whether or not they have a vegan diet for you, or there's a Starbucks next to your dorm. The parents who are paying for the journey are very much negative about using the venues in the United States now because of possible physical dangers, particularly from gun violence. Hey, I'm a guy who spent 11 years in New Mexico. I taught hunter's ed. But Natalia, you're asking an important question, and I'm giving you my best answer. We have another question.
Absolutely. Really, really thoughtful.
Thank you.
So the next question is there anything surprising that you found from your findings in your research? Especially in the second question, when you were talking about Latinx, Latina women finding connections and making those networks to support their graduate pursuits. Was there anything that you found surprising that was unexpected?
Absolutely. I forget the name of the official Macmillan programs. I found out there were 400, it's probably more now, there are approximately 400 colleges and universities, state colleges, sometimes still called community colleges, almost 400 around the country, who already at the undergraduate level were working with high schools for specific bridge programs to facilitate helping with reading programs if they had to be bilingual. This was not, this was not something which was affirmative action. This is for decades and decades. The communities themselves had made sure that both the colleges and the high schools had a seamless way of making sure the qualifications for admission to college would be made. And then that went to what we'll call bridge programs. I believe Vanderbilt University and Fisk were pioneers, and you'll find with the historically Black colleges and university and other tier 1, level 1 research schools going back 15, 20 years for Yadin Yeves. I mean, she had a science teacher who used to come to the farm to help tutor her in science and calculus, and was paid with chickens from her grandparents. And sometimes she had to walk to the bank, and when they signed an X to their checks and documents, she had to affirm the X. And when she joined the army, she was told, "Where are your Indian clothes?" They saw a woman from rural Puerto Rico. Don't you wear Indian headdress? Aren't you an Indian or something? Why aren't you married? Why are you here? And I don't know if everyone knows about ranks and promotion and commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers and enlisted people, but from a kid from rural Puerto Rico who ended up going to Drexel University, and now she's working for a doctorate, past 2 master's degrees, to be a warrant officer, to be in command. We're looking at things which I learned of the people involved, and in those 400 schools, there already was a program in place which got people from high school to master's and doctoral programs from the time they were young. And Bob Bartle said something interesting. He was an A student always, and he said he has a friend from sixth grade who swears that they were talking one day and he said, "I'm going to go to Harvard Law School," in sixth grade, and he believed it, and he believed it. Not because of affirmative action, not because there was a quota system at Harvard, was because he had the top schools in the United States competing for him on his talent. And I learned a lot of the nonsense we're seeing in the media, which I was part of. Sure, the DEI programs will go on to heat, well, probably without DEI cooperation, that documentary couldn't have been made because, every time you see a sub caption or a subtitle from Spanish to English, it's thousands and thousands of dollars in post-production. But I think the self-motivation that we saw, I did not really come across many people who say, well, I'm so thankful I got my doctorate because I'm Black or because I spoke Portuguese or Spanish, because otherwise nobody would have taken me. I heard just the opposite stories. I mean, you saw Coach Ira, the first Jewish student, I think, in a ultra evangelical Christian school where they sent him to play basketball, and they gave him an award. We have a second for a quick story, true story, where they honored him on Sunday morning once because of all of the work he had done to help the students and scholarships and athletics. And he had never been to a Christian church service in his life, and they invited him up on the stage and everything, and they started the offertory. And he didn't know what that was, and the minister handed him the stick with the little basket on the end of it, and to direct him to go into the audience to collect the offertory. And he looked at the minister on the mic on a full church on a Sunday, and he was a kid, an undergraduate kid, Jewish kid, never been in church before. He looked at the minister and looked around, and he said, "Well, thank you for the honor, but I don't know how to play lacrosse." He saw a stick with a basket on it. I don't know how to play lacrosse. These were the things I learned. Questions, comments? We're winding up the time.
Yeah, we are coming right up against the time. So, final question, if you had just one piece of advice for undergraduates who are considering, maybe they're kind of still on the fence about whether or not they want to pursue a graduate degree, especially if they're looking at some of the same financial constraints or familial pressures, right? That some of these remarkable students that you interviewed had to overcome themselves. What advice would you give?
One item which comes back to me time and time again whenever I see the video. Forget Facebook. Forget Instagram. Forget WhatsApp. Forget the comments from your friends on social media. Take the time to visit a law firm, to talk to an architect, to speak to a social worker, to talk to a mental health counselor, to see an imam or a Catholic priest or the obispo or a rabbi, to go to a cousin or an aunt or an uncle who's a realtor or who's running a nursing home or who is an aide in a hospital or a facility. Look for the centers of influence. That's what the military, the Department of Defense, when they're recruiting people, when they invite you to a dinner and there's a change of command ceremony, you're not a citizen. You're not Michelle. You're a center of influence at global learning at probably the fourth largest university in the United States of America. Number one in the state in online learning, number two in the United States in online learning. I'm Mark Scheinbaum, who obtained a doctorate at a late age, but I didn't know the years I was there, the Carnegie Endowment of something said we beat Harvard and Columbia, and the transfer of what I was studying was number one in the United States. Centers of influence at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at parties. Seek out people from careers and success stories in things you might be interested in. And instead of your friends at Duffy's or at the, at the in Doral or in Weston or at the Dolphin Mall on Saturday with your pizza, how about seeking out people who are already centers of influence in the fields you have an interest in? Because so many people I interviewed told me that, wow, I had a cousin in Atlanta who was the head nurse in the emergency room at a hospital, and she came down for Thanksgiving. That's why I'm going for my graduate degree in nursing, and that's why I want to get another degree in public administration. I want to be a hospital administrator just because of that one discussion we had at Thanksgiving. And it wasn't her mom, and it wasn't her dad, and it wasn't her friend from school, and it wasn't her teacher. Now, seek out some teachers, seek out some advisors, seek out your soccer coach, whatever. But your friends and your peers are important. Maybe they'll want to go to school with you. But the centers of influence and the disciplines you have the thirst and passion for are the people who will be happy to take the time. They'll invite you to Atlanta. Jazeel was invited back to Florida, no money. The teachers, the students, the janitors put money in an envelope for Jazeel to go from San Juan back to Florida to be interviewed by this one school that said, well, we like your portfolio. Maybe we'll give you a scholarship. And they did. And he ended up teaching there.
Yep.
The centers of influence. So, Michelle, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to share our research with the folks out there. They can email me anytime if I could be of any further assistance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just want to echo one of those things that you said. So students might feel hesitant to be like, I am just a student. Why would this person want to respond to my email? And I'm going to say the power behind I'm a student in XYZ and I'm interested in your story and your path to your current position. Can we meet for coffee so I can learn more about you? Is a powerful cold email. Do not
And
do
at FIU,
Yep.
the diversity of experience, the classmates, when you're in a class with students from 11 countries and people who are sometimes working in jobs that you didn't even know existed, and I'm not sorry. I personally, I don't know if I should say it, I have not given a quiz or a test or a midterm or a final in almost 3 years. I learned collaborative peer education. We have critical reports and analysis and an open source discussion board. I see some of my former TAs are joining us today. People create their own grades, but they're doing it and learning more from their cohorts and their fellow learners in their class than from any professor. I truly believe that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Scheinbaum, for sharing so much of your time, your expertise, and your experience with us today. And thank you, everyone who has attended for our session. As a reminder, TTR comes back again online in 2 weeks. So we're not back next week. It is a holiday. The next TTR is going to happen on November 18th. That session is Crossing Cultures, the Copper Bridge Connection. We encourage you to come out and join us online. Until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again next time.